So the topic I have been invited to speak about is the education of pre-adolescents, specifically in three topics: security, self-esteem, and moral compass. What we are going to offer you is some ideas that can help you to understand the mentality of your children. First of all, I have to say that the one who knows better how children are yourselves. So probably you are going to be a little deluded because saying, hey, he didn't know anything that I know. Come to my house, I will invite you, and you will know a lot more things about what a child is. Anyway, there are a lot of studies from psychology, from pedagogy, from philosophy that perhaps when you have not been trained to be a father or mother, in the sense that you have to do, you have to go to college and to medical school so as to be a doctor, but you be a father by yourself, doing some things, and then you find that you have a child, and how can I grow him? And how can I help him or her to grow and to flourish, both from a human and from a spiritual point of view? So that is what I would like to show you. Obviously, we have only about 40 minutes for this talk and then some time for questions. So if you say, hey, you didn't speak about a very important topic, yes, I know, but time is reduced. Perhaps next time I am going to California, we'll have another opportunity. So, what are the characteristics of childhood? What are the key topics of a child, beginning from when he has some kind of conscious of herself, about 3 4 years, until adolescence? So we will finish this talk on puberty, about when they are 10, 12, and then begins the huge problems, as you really know. So an adolescent, a child from the psychological point of view, is characterized by a thinking which is concrete. He does not have the capacity of abstract thinking. When you have to teach a child to do additions, you don't say 2 plus 2 are 4. You usually do 2 apples. These 2 apples are 4 apples. And then the child, when you say two, he cannot understand what is two. But when you say 2 apples, then he sees the apples, the other 2 apples, and he says 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is the natural way in which he can learn additions, but also he can learn to deal with the other people, to deal with Jesus. Jesus here in the tabernacle, so you can speak to him, and he says, "So I'm going to speak. If he's here, he must be here with his head, his arms, and so on. He cannot imagine that is only in a bread or in a piece of bread, but that is normal. Little by little, when the brain matures, and he will be able to go to the abstract thought that is typical from adolescence and mainly adulthood. Then the second characteristic is the affectivity that is led by the immediate. When you are walking the street with a child and she sees an ice cream, she says, I want it and I want it now. And you can explain her that, hey, we're going to arrive home in about half an hour. So please, if I give you your ice cream now, you will not be hungry for lunch. And so she understands and say, okay, daddy, I have understood, so I will accept it now. I want my ice cream now. Otherwise, I get angry, I cry, I have a mood temper, and that is normal in them. So you cannot blame them. What you have to do is educate him and explaining little by little. She will not understand that at the first attempt because she has a concrete thought, and the concrete thing is the ice cream in front of me. The future meal is something which is very far from me and I cannot see it. So it is a language that I still do not manage. We have to accompany the child from the short term to the long term, and it is very important for the future. There is a famous experiment which is called the marshmallow experiment. I recommend you to, put it in YouTube. That was led by a professor from Stanford that consisted in putting a marshmallow in front of a 4-year-old kid and say, if you wait for 15 minutes and you don't eat it, I will give you a second marshmallow, a reward. And then he put on a one side mirror and he recorded the reaction of the child. Very funny. So you go, it only lasts for a couple of minutes and you will enjoy it. The conclusion is very easy. Some people were able to stop and not to eat and get the reward. Most of the children ate the marshmallow and didn't get the reward. That is what is known about the experiment of marshmallow. But the purpose of Walter Mitchell was not to study that very situation, but the future. And he did a follow up for 40 years of those kids, and he found that when they were 44, the kids that were able to wait so as to get a bigger reward after only 15 minutes, when they were 44, they had higher studies, higher socioeconomical level, more stable families, and less problems with sex, drug, and rock and roll. So he was not a moralist. His idea, he was a pedagogist, and he wanted to help parents to help their children to educate the children. And his message was, if you want your children to flourish, to have a better future life, teach them to wait. Now we have a great difficulty for waiting, which is the cell phone. The cell phone that offers us immediate gratification. If at any moment you say, "Hey, I don't know if someone has greeted me," so you go, you check, and then you get still anxiety reduces, but then you get not habituated. You lose the ability to wait, and it is difficult for us adults. Imagine a child or an adolescent that has grown up in the society of the social media and does not know that possibility of waiting. Then the third characteristic, we speak about concrete thinking, about immediate affectivity, and about egocentrism, which means that the child thinks only on himself. It is easy to demonstrate. Put a very nice cake and a small in front of a child, in front of a few children, and say, you have to eat these children, you have to divide this cake between all of you. What will they do? If they are 3, 4, 5, they will take the biggest place of the bigger piece of the cake. It is selfishness? No, it is egocentrism, which is different. The child, as he has a concrete thinking, can only think on himself, his necessities. Little by little, he has to go out of that thinking, and he has to say not only that I have to share the things with my peers, but that it is a good thing for me to share my issues with the people who are around me because they are part of my identity. My brothers and my sisters as part of me. So it is not a great sacrifice, it is a sacrifice, but it is not such a sacrifice for me to share my belongings with them. And then it is the same with my friends and my football team and everything. So, what are the challenges that we have to develop during infancy? What are the tasks that you have as parents? but also as educators in other environments. An example in school, an example in mentoring, in tutoring, and so on. We are going to speak about security, about how a child can be can feel that he can be safe in the world. When the child is born, they say that it's a very traumatic experience because he's closed, warm, all the world, the small world in the mother's womb is known, a big corner, but then after the birth, he opens to a world in which there are lies, there are cries, his son cries, there are noise and lights and a lot of people. So what is happening here? It could be like waking up one morning and being in the middle of Times Square. So that must be the sounds good. We don't remember that, but it must be very traumatic. But then along he meets other ambience, other places. He has to learn that he can be safe in those ambience. The second thing that he has to get is self-esteem, love for himself. And you say, hey, first should be self-esteem and then the world. But it is not that, because the child first meets the world and then he meets himself because of that concrete thinking. You can see the world, but you cannot see yourself. And you don't have, because you are not mentally prepared, because the brain is very immature, the baby does not have the possibility to see, to think, this is me and this is my mother, this is me, this is my, even my physical boundaries. So self-esteem comes at a second moment. The third will be the moral compass, or the formation of the moral conscience. We will not speak specifically, but we will mention a little bit the strength of will as a fourth task to develop during the infancy. They need to be able to do what they know that they have to do. Tolerance to frustration, very important, to keep doing good, to keep trying even if I fail in an attempt. And then altruism, which is the what solves the tendency to selfishness, to be self-centered. When you open, when you extend your identity to other groups, beginning by the family, and then the school, and then the football team, and all that. Obviously, the place to develop um, that capacity is the family. A family that has to devote time to the children in general, but also to every single child. And it is very important from the infancy to adolescence to have some time, if possible weekly, at least monthly, in which you parents take with you the children, the one child, and say, please, can you accompany me to the supermarket to buy to the petrol station? It will take us only 15-20 minutes, and then you speak to him, and then you speak how at the school, your friends, their names, your frustrations, and so, and the child gets done to share with you her worries. Otherwise, because you say that their worries are not important, so it is not so necessary to speak with him. But then, when important problems arrive in adolescence, they don't have the habit of speaking to you about their worries. And then we found a problem. An adolescent who cannot speak, who doesn't know how to speak, who has not the experience of how helps her to share her worries with the parents. That means also taking advantage, even if we are all the family gathered, of the moments of the meals without using the cell phone. It is a very good habit in some families to say, when we are at the table, all the cell phones from the children, adolescents, the college student guys, and also the cell phone of that man are outside the dining room or outside the kitchen, because otherwise we don't speak with us. And it is our treasure. This is our half an hour a day of speaking, of being together, and we have to protect it from the invasion of the media. So, first point would be security. And I am going to take advantage of the famous theory of attachment by the British psychoanalyst John Bowlby. I have uploaded in this link that they are going to share with you a couple chapters about, in one of them is explained the theory of attachment. So the attachment is the relationship, according to this John Bowlby, that a baby establishes with the main figure in his life, which is mom. So with that mom, the child seeks for contact. That is the only thing that calms the boy when he cries because of anything, because he's hungry, because he's cold, because he did something inside him and you have to change um, the clothes, or simply if he or she feels alone. Something is strange, I heard a noise, and then do you only have to say, hey, I am here? No, you have to catch him up and calm him. In the very beginning, when the baby is very young, the only people that can get it is the mom. The dad can try, and sometimes he gets, but unfortunately for the mothers, only the father is the one who is able to calm her. So the baby looks for contact. When the mother is not, and the baby realizes, sometimes he suffers anxiety, separation anxiety. He gets anxious. Where is my mom? Where is that person that calms me? So what does he do? The only language that he has still learned, that is crying. And when the relationship, when the attachment is well built, the baby get calms when the mother returns. If it works, calm, anxiety, mother calm, I calm again, and then the baby feels that the world is safe, that mom will be there even if I don't call her. And then he learns to manage his own anxiety. So it is good for the mom not to go immediately at the first cry, but making the child down to wait a little bit. I will be there, but I won't be there immediately. So we can all do a kind of marshmallow experiment with our children so as to teach them to wait. This security in the world and in the people that loves him makes him able to explore the world. When the child is, the infant is about 2 3 years old, you take him to the park. The first day, probably the child will be very close to you, but little by little, he explores. He goes here and there. Sometimes he looks at the mother, and sometimes there is a point very important in which he goes out of the sight of the mother, and he cannot see the mother anymore. And then that is the exploration of the new, of the world, that will help him very much to um, for the rest of his life, for exploring the world. And then it can happen that he falls, that somebody buys him, and so on. What does then the child? Go to the mother. The mother is there, she calms her, And then the child is able to explore the Lord a little longer. And then at the end, and that is the goal, the child becomes independent of the mother because she has learned that the world has some dangers, but it is safe, basically safe, and that if I need somebody, my parents will be there. Attentive not only from a physical point of view, they are seated there, but mainly from a affective point of view. She will be able to hug me, to calm me, to say, "Don't worry, I am here," and so. That is the perfect answer. But sometimes it does not happen like that. Sometimes because there is an absent mother, because she died, because it is a broken family, because she's too worried, too occupied, too busy with her job, and then she cannot give the child all the time or the affection that she needs. So what the child learns is when I have a problem, I have to deal by myself. But I am too young, but I cannot. So he develops the idea that I have to confront the world by myself, and I feel overwhelmed by that. The second problem that we can find, and perhaps in our wealthy society is more frequent, is an anguished mother. The mother that when she sees the baby crying, she says, "Oh, perhaps she has a fever. A fever. Perhaps she has a important illness." So she gets anxious, and that anxiety is perceived by the child as, "So I have a real important problem. So I'm going to cry more." And the mother, seeing the baby crying more, she is still more anxious, and then it is a vicious cycle that shows the boy that if I feel any negative feeling, it is the end of the world. That is what transmits a mother. Instead, imagine when a mother is able to manage her own anxiety and say, "Don't worry, my child, I am here with you and there won't be problems. The world has challenges, but they can be managed." The third kind of mother is the overprotective mother, which is the one that, contrary to the other, lets the child to explore the world. The which mother does not let the world is too anxious. I will too dangerous. It will be too anxious. But she says you can explore the world, but absolutely covered like an astronaut, so as to avoid any kind of problem. What is the message for the children? I have to protect with me. War is must be very dangerous if I have to wear like a medium aged knight so as to avoid all those kinds of dangers. Finally, we have the most dangerous kind of motherhood, which is the incoherent mother, who is the one that is not able to manage her own feelings. And so, when the child goes with a bad grade from school, he's punished. But if the mother is blue, if the mother has drunk, if the mother, then she says, "Don't worry, go to your house and I will give you some candies." But on the opposite, if the child arrives home and she says, "Mom, I got a good grade," the mom mm, blames him because she feels bad, or does him a disproportionate punishment. What is the result? That the child says, "The world is a chaos," and responds to me in a way that I cannot understand. If I behave well, I am punished. I can be punished. If I behave bad, I can be rewarded. So he does not know how to behave. This attachment theory is not only for children. Also, some other psychologists have studied them in adults, and they found that there are four attachment styles in adulthood, because the attachment figure is not only for infancy. As long as the baby grows, the father finally enters, and the father is also a secure base from which the baby can also explore the world, and so the mother can be a little more free. But then also the teachers, and also in adulthood, the partner, and also the professors in university, and the mentors and the spiritual director can be also a secure base. And then it means also that all of us who are here are called to be a secure base for people who cannot manage themselves. And it's a task that opens our hearts not only to our family, not only to our children when they are infants, but to so many people that perhaps need it and developed an insecure attachment because of a family, a parents that weren't able to help him. So mm, the attachment styles in adulthood depend on two characteristics. The image of yourself, you have a good image of yourself, you will be low dependent of other people. I feel sure when I am myself, with myself. But if you have a bad image of yourself, then you become dependent. But it has to be crossed with a second line of the axis, which is the image of the others. If you have a good image of the others, you will be secure, both if you are alone with yourself and when you are with other people. What about if you have a bad image of yourself and a good image of the others? I don't trust myself, I cannot take my own decisions, so I have to put my decisions in the hands of other people. And then you become a dependent. It can also happen that you have a bad image of yourself and a bad image of the others. And then there is the fearful attachment style. The people who are alone because they are fearful of the other people, but are not well because they are not trust themselves. So very anxious people, so very vulnerable to suffer mental illness. Finally, we have people who have a good image of themselves and a bad image of the others. Those are the narcissistic personalities that trust absolutely on themselves and despise the other people. All that stuff begins in infancy, but is not a condemn to future unhappiness. If you know that, if you know for yourself, now I am speaking to adults, but also to professors or to people to they deserve their life to help other people. If you know how the that person grown up in his family, you will be you will more easily help that person to compensate the currencies. Also with your own person. And then comes the second characteristic that I wanted to study, which is self-esteem. We have spoken about security in yourself. So how can I improve the security in myself? Or better, how can I help children to grow in the security on themselves? First of all, the message of the parents. When the parents say, I love you, when the parents say you are worthy, when the parents say you have virtues, you are able to do good things, in that sense, it is very dangerous for a boy the generalizations, the negative generalizations. You are stupid, you are lazy, you are an idiot, you are very disorganized, because then the child receives that and he says, "Is my father, that my father from me is God, is everything, is the person, the one who gave me the life, the one who has experience, age, and so he's telling me that I am lazy, he's sure. he's surely right. So I'm lazy, and I am lazy. It is normal that I don't work, I don't do my homework, and I get bad grades. So it is better to relativize that message and to say, sometimes you are lazy, do so, sometimes not. You can grow. That is a message that gives hope. But then that is external gratification. If you have only external gratification, you can begin easily a narcissistic, which is like a balloon full of air that when it is pop, it explodes, and you see that it is full of nothing. That is person that constructed their personality and their self-esteem only because of they hear from the other people. You have also, as long as you can, and you get also that abstract thought to know yourself and to criticize yourself and to put goals and archive goals. That is the thing that fills the balloon with solid issues, and then it makes you very secure and with a high self-esteem when little by little you are able to get greater goals. And this is one of the most challenging tasks in education, to accept the child as he is. I love you with your defects, with your limits, with your faults, but you can be better. And then if you only say that I love you without being demanding, then he won't flourish. He won't get the best that he can do. But if you give him only demanding and not love, he will become easily a perfectionist. He will accept that the only way in which I can say that I'm valid is getting A plus in all my matters. Otherwise, I will be failed. Then you can help, you can teach without substituting. You can help the boy to make the Lego and to teach him how to put one piece of the other, and then you have to retire. And when the child comes and look, my Lego went down. Okay, I'm going to help you to teach you why it was very stable, but do it again. That is the tolerance to frustration. What is the easy answer for a parent? Did you want a big Lego castle? I'm going to build it for you, and now you can play. But then, what is the message that the child can learn? That I am, I cannot do it. I need someone bigger, wiser than me that constructed this for me. So he will become a dependent for the rest of his life. Obviously, it is that we are there is a spectrum, and you have to discern which is the best solution for every kind for every child. But obviously, for a child to construct a small castle by himself can strengthen his self-esteem more than receive as an reward a castle constructed by the father. This is for the Lego, that is a good example, but say the same for sport, for grades at the school, for all the different ambience in his life. And then, so as to he doesn't become a perfectionist, valorize the incomplete achievements, which means that you have to say, I'm proud of you, even if he might have done better. I like very much a phrase, children need the mother's cuddle and teenagers need the father's appreciation. And this both for boys and girls. A child needs the hug of the mother, the contact. But the father, it is partially a role in society. But I think that it is not only a role. The father is the one who has to cut the umbilical cord between the child and the mom, what is called by some authors the symbiosis between the mother and the child, and also to separate so that the child can build a own identity. and not to be fusioned with the identity of the mother. The father is usually the one, partially because of social role, but partially because of a lot of psychological issues, the one who says, you can be better. And then we arrive to the last point I wanted to speak about, which is the formation of moral compass, of moral conscience. I am going to use briefly an American philosopher who is called Lawrence Kohlberg, and he spoke about three levels of moral conscience that begin in infancy and finishes in adulthood. So now we are going out of the picture. The first one is the pre-conventional level, and he says that it is from the point that a child, an infant, has some kind of conscious of himself that he exists, that is about 4 years, and it should finish by puberty, by 11 years. It has two stages. The first one is orientation towards punishment and obedience. It is when you find a child that has to do his jobs, small jobs for a 5-year-old man, but he has to do that. Otherwise, he will be punished. I told you that you have to wake up in this time, that you have to put your room in order. You didn't, so you do not have the dessert today. And then the child learns the following day to do his homework, to do his tasks, and so. It is normal. It is a normal way of educating in the first stages in which you cannot do a lot more explanations. Imagine a child that wants to touch the plug and he can be electrocuted. Are you going to explain him what is electricity, what is high tension? No, you say, don't touch, and if you touch it, I will protect your hand. Obviously, it can work when the child is about 4 years old, but is not enough for an adult. And so, little by little, you need to explain here why it is good for him to wake up early in the morning, and why electricity can be dangerous for you. And then we arrive to the second level of this pre-conventional level, which is what Kohlberg calls the naive hedonism, which is when the child, now he's a little older, in the stage of the plays, when he begins playing with other people, about 6 years old, and then he realizes some people is asking me for my football, and I don't like to lend him my football. But they have another game that I like. So if I lend him my football, he will lend me the other toy. So I am going to do what in Latin is called a do ut des. I'm going to be generous with you, so as to you be generous, you give me back the favor, and then all of us will be more happy. But it is hedonist. I help you to be helped by you. So it is a kind of um, evolution for the better from these chronological and normal stages, but obviously it is not really generous. He's not lending his toys, he's only expecting for a reward. And then we arrive to the third level, which is the conventional level that begins usually by puberty, by 10 years. And it has also two sub levels. The first one is the good child orientation, to behave according to the social rules, according to the rules of the family, not so as to be rewarded or punished, but because I want to accomplish the image that you are telling me that I have to fulfill. And then you can feel, even before 11 years old, children who are very respectful, who test every day good morning, who let their seat in the autobus to the ladies, and so, and she's the perfect child. But moved by social roles, by the role that he is supposed to have. So it is insufficient because he has also to internalize all those rules. Because at the long term, it is very, it creates a lot of anxious to work only for goals that have given me by other people. That means you have to build your own values. And those values, and that is part of the adolescent crisis. We said that we are going to speak in pre-adolescence, so it would be another talk for the future. The adolescent challenges and refuses the values from the parents because he has to build his own identity. An identity that can coincide with the identity that the parents wanted me to be, but in other aspects not. So I choose my values, even from a religious point of view. And an easy way to build your identity is say no to everybody, push out everybody from my life, even things that used to be important for me, and then building my identity. You say, hey, you are exaggerating a little bit, refusing all the family values. It is normal in an adolescent. It is a stage, it is a step so as to construct, so as to pass from a sticker to a tattoo. The values given by the family are stickers, so they can fall easily. A tattoo is inside your skin. So, conventional level, first sub-level is the good child orientation. The second one is the social concern and awareness, which is when the child does not only be good so as to be valorized, so the people say you are a very nice guy, you are the child that all the mothers would like to have, and so on, but to construct society, to make a better society. The concept of philanthropism. I want to improve the people. So that is very important. It usually happens at the end of adolescence when the adolescent uh, is able to get out of that self-centeredness that we said that is characteristic of the infant and the child. Colbert says that most of the people, of the even adult people, stop here. They only are able to do the social contract. I'm going to improve society, you are also going to improve society, we will work together to do a better work, and that is. But he speaks about a post-conventional level that is comes after that, and has also two steps. The first one is the orientation of the social contract, like Rousseau. We have to establish limits in our freedom, and you have to renounce to some of our freedom in order to have a better society and to be able to live together. So I don't only want to improve the world and do whatever I want to get a better world, but I learned that I have also to respect the other people, their intimacy, their values, and so on, because I want him to respect my values. It is important in a multicultural society. I am not going to impose you my values, but we can live together. And the sixth and last step, and that will be the last idea, I think, is when you arrive to the morality of universal ethical principles, when you get to have strong personal values, different somewhat from the other people, even in Christian life, because now we have just lived the election of the new Pope. The Pope Francis has his own values, which means, in his case, the priorities for the church and society that were partially different from Benedict XVI, which was partially different from John Paul II. And sure, they will be partially different, partially equal, with Pope Leo. So it is normal that different people see different answers for a similar problem. and all of them can be valid. Perhaps one is better than the other, but all of them are valid, all of them are Christian. So that is the morality of the ethical principles. I have my own values. I think that they should be shared by the whole society, but because of the previous step, I respect the other people who think with me. So I work so that my values are spread in society, but if they are not, I don't become a fundamentalist close to other people who can teach me. This security in yourself, and then we arrive to the first step that we spoke about, which was probably security. To have your own values, to be your own values means that you have to be secure on yourself, that you have to have learned that the world is secure, is safe. Otherwise, I don't struggle with a world that is not safe. And you need also a good self-esteem. When you know that, you are able even to break the social concern and the social contract when it goes against your values. For example, in the consensus object or the conscious of objection, when I am asked to do something that is against my religion, my values, and then I say, it was a former step. I am asked to do that, but it goes against my conscience. So I am not going to do that even if I will receive some kind of punishment from society. There is a person with a strong personality constructed. And that is the goal. And probably that is what you will want that your children, your adolescents arrive to. That is what you would like to have. So I invite you also to go into the post-conventional level, not to remain trapped, as Corbett says, in the social concerns and awareness and philanthropy, but to check and to foster your own values. So I think that is the time. Thank you very much. And I will be happy to answer your questions if you have some easy questions that I know the answer. Thank you very much.
Maybe you could stand up if you have a question so people can hear, repeat it.
Professor, what is adolescence? Because I've kind of lost track of what that means as opposed to puberty. How do you define it in terms of maturity of thinking or psychology?
Yeah. Adolescence is a moment in which the child is not anymore a child, and he knows that, but he's not an adult. So there is a crisis of identity. Then he cannot work anymore for the paradigm of the good child. He does not like it, and he cannot know how I have to behave. He has to explore a lot the world, and he has to build his own identity. This is me, and I am not mom. I'm sorry, but I am not anymore you. The umbilical cord is cut forever. I love you very much, Daddy, but I won't be a lawyer like you. I want to be a doctor, or I want to be an artist. So, it's, for some people, it also means some kind of rebellion. Rebellion with the norms that I received that make me feel a child, and I refuse to be a child. And it means also insecurity because I don't know which my future will be. I know that a lot of things depend of my decisions now, and I have to take decisions by myself, and it is very challenging. You suffer a lot of anxiety when you have to take your own decisions and also to take your own responsibilities. Mhm.
And she's written an extremely influential book that has like guided all of my peers' child raising called Good Inside. And I'm not super familiar with it, but I know that one of the things that she talks about a lot, and it might be more nuanced than I'm portraying it because I haven't read it or understood it completely. But she talks about not punishing because the child does not yet have the skill to not do what you're asking them not to do. Um, and so I'm sure you've heard of the gentle parenting movement, and she's not exactly like, of course, there are nuances to that, but I think that her, a lot of what she has written about has influenced some of that style of parenting. And I was wondering if you could give some clarity to that because I appreciate that you talked about the need to just say, no, you cannot do this, and you get punished if you do because they're not capable of reasoning. But at the same time, if they can't yet do the thing that you're asking them to do, and punishment is the answer. How to kind of think of those two ideas.
Yeah, there are a lot of schools, so perhaps I agree 95% with which you have done, but I think that punishment is necessary because uh, punishment shows you in a clear way that there has been bad consequences greater than what you really see. So it helps the child to have a external limit when the punishment and the game of punishment and reward is clear. That is important for a child and adolescent. Rules must be clear but also flexible. And then it is also demonstrated that it can help, and an education without punishment do not help so much the child. But uh, that is the easy result, punishment, but it's not the best result. The best result is rewards. If you want that a child behaves in a certain way, in a good way, in a virtuous way, apart from punishing when he has done something really bad, but it is better for him to be rewarded when he does good. And sometimes, mainly in good families, we don't do reward when people behave well because you have only done what you are supposed to do. So don't ask me that if you get the A grade, I have to give you something special. It is your daddy. But from the point of view of an adolescent, if he receives the same reward, if he gets a A plus and A minus, he would be less moved to improve. So the reward, without being behaviorist in a strict sense, also help a lot. And then you have to explain. But the important thing is not only punishment and rewards, but that the adolescent child or adult himself is able to give himself his own reward and to say, I am proud of me because what I have done. That is the autonomous from the moral point of view. And that is the goal. And sometimes when you have very insecure students or children and so and tell you, man, look what I have got. I got a plus. Congratulate me. And the answer for her can be, did you congratulate yourself? No, I need your congratulation. No, you need your own congratulation. Because in the future, you won't have a man all the time attentive to you to reinforce. So the reinforcement must be little by little internal. And then the child, the adolescent, will be independent also for taking the decisions and for continuing doing good, even if people do not reward him. Or even in that last step by Kohlberg, even if people do resistance, but they go even against the values generalized in a society. We can think of a society which is not Christian, but a person with a profound Christian identity can not only survive but can flourish in that society and help that society to change.
How do you, you mentioned it in your talk, but how do you avoid your child from becoming a perfectionist?
Mhm.
Because I was a perfectionist in school, and I have two daughters, and my oldest is very sanguine, is showing that she's a perfectionist.
Yeah.
When something doesn't go her way, she throws a huge fit and she's really sad about it.
Yeah. Recently, I wrote an article that is called Perfectionism and Christian Perfection. And the subtitle can be How to Accomplish the Commandment of the Lord: Be perfect as your Father is, your Heavenly Father is perfect, without becoming an OCD. And it is, well, and we study it from a psychological point of view, from the biblical point of view, and for doing it shorter, the answer is you cannot be perfect. And perhaps you can confound that commandment by the Lord with be impeccable, as my heavenly Father is impeccable. You cannot be impeccable. So you have to be humble, but not from a moral point of view, but from a psychological point of view, to acknowledge that you cannot be perfect in, or you cannot be the best in all the aspects of your life. You are called to improve and also to acknowledge your limitations, and to be happy with them. Um, to accept what Romano Guardini used to say, the crisis of the experience of the limits. He said that it happens about the 50s or the 40s, when you realize that you are not going to go in your life so far as you wanted. And it is very painful that you say, okay, I have burned half of my life and my goals won't be accomplished. Then, another answer that can be said to them from a moral point of view is, when you have not done everything well, you can complete what is lacking, with contrition. If you have done something which is not good from a moral point of view, apologizing with the other people, and learning from experience. I like very much riding the bike, and my mother suffered a lot when I was learning to ride the bike, because if you want really to ride the bike, you have to fall. There is not another way. And I remember arriving to my house all that, have even the sign of a good cyclist, which is a lot of scars in the cheek. Um, so my mother used to tell me, please don't drive anymore the bike. We're going to throw it out. Mother, all my friends go the bike. I enjoy it a lot. Please fix it and let me go. But next week, no, tomorrow, because tomorrow my friends are going to meet again. And she was patient and she did it. And now I am an adult. I drive the bicycle 3 4 hours where I am in my house in Rome, and I enjoy it very much. And I was able to overcome the fear of the bike. Now you say bike, then you can say exams or a grade or a sport or anything. So help them, that is the tolerance to frustration, to say I am valid even if I don't get the top of my possibilities. Remember also that the greatest goals are got in the long term, step by step, and in a not as linear, not continual line that ascends, but has ups and downs. And the people who arrive to the top are the people that, when they were in a down, instead of letting all away, were able to begin again and then get the goal.
Can I ask, not really, not really ask a question, but follow up on
Uh-huh.
that answer? Um, I've often thought about that mine in the gospel, be ye perfect. Our Lord doesn't say, be ye perfect as I am perfect. It says, be ye perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect. So I've always interpreted that as not to look at the human condition so much, but to look at the greatest perfection in God is his mercy and his love. So that's the goal.
Yes, in fact, in the parallel text, so in order to understand difficult text in the Bible, it is useful to go to parallel text. And Luke also presents that passage. And he does not say be perfect, but be merciful as your heavenly Father is merciful. So you can say perfection for us humans is be merciful with the other people. Can you please come a little closer, please?
You have mentioned in your talk about the identity crisis of adolescents that I have heard a lot of friends and family who have young adults who have been raised, Catholic schools, and as soon as they hit college or are now brought to the real world, the secular world, they have stopped going to church. They have been resisting, the values that they grew up with. And what would you advise parents, especially mothers, who are very who are saddened by this transition and a child who's really having a good child and now prevents or even dislikes to go back to church because of the peer pressure of
Yeah.
maybe the college life and how the peers
Yeah.
how would you recommend what
Okay. First of all, I will tell these parents whose children didn't persevere in Christian life not to blame them very much because the world is very pressing, unfortunately. Then they can learn from the past because perhaps they weren't able, and it is impossible to do it perfectly, but they weren't able to transmit a solid Christian identity to the child, and then the adolescent had only a sticker of Christian life and not a tattoo. So you have to educate the child in such a way that he understands that it is good for him to be a Christian and it is not a kind of family custom, but when I have to be independent of the family, I can rule it out. Then also these families that are suffering because they see that their child, their now the adult child, is taking decisions that are in contrast with the church, that they pray for them, that they trust the mercy of God, and that they remember Saint Monica and how Saint Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, said those tears from a mom cannot be futile, cannot be lost. So keep praying, praying, insisting, even you can offer to God not to see it in the life as a sacrifice that I will do so as to see my child converted in heaven. In the meanwhile, as you are here, without insisting too much, because he can be a little tired of a mom that every week reminds me that I have to go to confession or go to mass and so on. But um, um, love him, let him to speak to you about everything, let him to be accepted, even if he's doing things that you don't like. Both Pope Francis, but also Pope Leo, in his first speech, said, God loves us always, even if we are sinners, and we are all sinners. It is not real that if I behave well, God loves me. If I am a sinner, God does not love me anymore. No, that is not our God. So think about that and make him think, make him know that God still loves him and that's why he's waiting for him as the father of the prodigal son, and God will be very happy when he comes to the church, when he wants, when he converts, and when life is very long and something we hope will happen in their life. Okay, thank you very much.